That's how we do it.
Let me tell
That's how we
you.
roll.
You're live.
Hi, I'm Hannah, your behavior analyst, and you are on the first episode of the Spero Show. And before we dig into all the details, we have two amazing people here. We have Krystal Larson, who is our guest. She's fantastic. She knows so many things. And then we have Kevin Hughes, our producer. I'm not sure if you can see him, but if you hear a random voice, he's going to read off the questions because I can't read and talk all at the same time. My brain just. So if you guys know how to do that, let me know. Yes, Kevin.
Yep, just saying hello. You won't hear much of me.
That's when we go off script. He's like, "You're done. We're done here." But the purpose of the show in general, since this is the first one, got to say a little bit about that, is to give the space for topics to be talked about in the world of behavior analysis because we have so many new clinicians that why not create a space to talk about the problems and problem solve and educate because the clinicians who just became BCBAs are going to be our future in 5 years. So why don't we move it forward to make it better now? So we're going to have different guests. Today we get Krystal. It's going to be so much fun. And this first one is going to be part of a series. And this series is to talk about toxic workplace. And what we're going to do is we are going to be discussing a real situation that actually happened. This is a company that's been around at least 10 years, right, Krystal? And we both went through it and we survived. I'm always like the 129 days of this, but you have more. So I wanted to bring you on for the story before I even got there. And so we can talk about our story, but we wanted to tie it to behavior analysis and habits and patterns because you are a BCABA. And for people that don't know what that is, Krystal, you know everything already. You need an honorary next level.
Thank you. But I don't think that's how it works.
We'll change the system. Isn't a BCBAD just honorary? Like it's special. Like they were upset they didn't have a special title, so we should do something. That's another topic. But you've been in the field for a while, but we want to talk about what happened so that other people don't end up in the same toxic situation. And then we can talk about what happens after when you get out of those situations too. So if you want to start telling your experience, like your story, and maybe start with what got pulled you in.
Sure. So I do want to say thanks, Hannah, for, if it wasn't for this work environment, we would have never met. And as much stuff as we're gonna share with everyone, there is good to everything. So I honestly get to meet an awesome person, and we get to share our science and prepare the younger folks to avoid these kind of cultures. So I'll just quickly tell you about myself. I'm a BCABA board certified assistant behavior analyst. I've been in the field for about 15 years, credentialed 12, 13, something like that. I don't know. I'm getting old. And I predominantly, when practicing in our science, I do therapeutic approaches with facilities and community-based settings generally. And then I, for, as you're aware, technology and human rights and continuing education. And that's kind of why I'm bringing that up, because that's kind of why I started with this organization. So it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I had been in the field already for, I don't know, 7 years or something like that. My math isn't working tonight. And for a telehealth position. About 7 years ago, that did not exist in our space, not to the level it is now. And part of the reason was I was a single parent at the time. I have a child who has medical needs, and I was doing a disservice for my consumers of my behavior services, because, sometimes when you have with medical conditions, you sometimes have to be out of work for 2-3 weeks at a time. And it can, negatively, I just felt like I wasn't doing my job for my consumers at the best level I could. Out in the universe, that I was going to find some telehealth job that never existed in our space at that time. And so happened to come across my email was a position to take over the registered program, the credential. So for those of you who don't know what that is, level position in the field of applied behavior analysis under the Behavior Analyst Certification Board. And it's been around for less than 10 years. And this was about, the credential had been around for about 2 years. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like perfect. I love teaching. I love training. I love getting new people to join our field and help more people, no matter if they're with autism. And so that's how I got sucker ducked into this lovely unethical place. And responded and did a couple interviews, did a couple projects, and got hired.
Like in 2 days, like the rest of us.
It was a different, so
You weren't found on Saturday and then like already working Sunday. I mean, come on. That's
no, that I will say the first time it was not. But I did provide. So I had some projects I had to do as part of my internship, or not interview process, which really was free work. So it was masked in a different way back then. But I wasn't aware, I was just gung-ho about, I'm going to do something in marriage, the science of behavior analysis, and just share our wonderful science, our knowledge, humans like humans, how to help people become more productive, their well-being, all those kind of things. And what better than to do it virtually? I mean, it really was like, for me, I thought it was the best situation to be possible. I would say, other than the free work, it took about 3 months before I actually got hired, which is an anomaly, which I know we're going to discuss later on. But there were a few things that happened with me in this organization that didn't happen with other people, for sure. I will say the second and third time I went working for this, it was a, hey, exit from this person organization, by the way, who is not a behavior analyst, not a psychologist, not anything in the medical or behavioral health field, is just some woman who's got a college degree that says she has she, he, or it, or they, or whatever this pronoun is, has a master's in business administration at Kellogg University. However, an MBA does not mean you are qualified to work with human beings. So that was my first lesson learned. And then so like the second and third time, I literally would get a call from this individual and they were like, hey, I need help with X, Y, and Z. And the first time they called me back, I specifically told them I would not entertain coming back until you paid my back pay. And it was dollars. So I bring that up because everyone else who we have encountered, and I'm sure whoever else you're going to bring on, Hannah, my story is not different than any kind of way. I might have been onboarded differently. It was packaged different. It was different, but the function, all that stuff. But so, yeah, it was, I thought it was going to be in a great marriage of everything point in my life, and I was mistaken.
Yeah, I think everyone is going to have something similar with, you think you're walking into the dream job. The way it's sold, you're like, that's exactly what I want. Somehow it's lined up like that. And they're actually, in some of the interviews and things like that I would see happening, there would be attempted projects that, like you're describing, but they never got executed. And so that person was never onboarded. It was like it was floating in the universe and then it didn't happen. So at what point, let me backtrack, the whole not being paid, yeah, that's that's a pattern. But when did you know, like, it's a dream job, even in the first time, when did you notice something's wrong? Because a lot of people don't want to get into toxic situations. So they're like, what do I look for first? But how did you know when something was off? Because that's a long period of pay to not get. There had to
Yeah.
be some clues sooner.
Yeah. So first, let me just make a correction real quick, if that's okay. I was
Yeah.
never not. So again, I was an anomaly. So I was never not paid. I was never paid. I mean, so I was paid. It just wasn't maybe my full check. There was a point where I was a supervisor running this organization right under. So I was under the impression at the time that my, colleagues that were working, supposedly working underneath me, if I deferred some of my payment, then they would get paid and then they could feed their families and things like that. So I do want to correct that I wasn't one of those. Um, but to your other, what was the first sign that I noticed something was wrong? Are we asking like when I first started, or like, hindsight 2020 experience, because those are two different
Do
animals.
both,
Okay.
because you're right. In the moment, you, like, hindsight, I now see what I saw then. I was like, oh shoot, I
Hmm.
could have like completely avoided it,
Yeah.
but I didn't listen to my gut
My
at the
gut.
time.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So, okay, going back, it was, so again, I was under, there was meta contingencies going on. So, right, like I was specifically looking for a telehealth opportunity that didn't exist up to the level it does now. I was also, inside myself about the whole, being able to serve my clients in the best way I could and still be a mom to a kid that had medical. Um, so the first, I wouldn't even say it was a red flag. I would call it a caution flag, was when I actually responded to call for, to apply. I did do my due diligence. I was at least aware enough to do some kind of background on the company. And I happened, before I even submitted a resume to them and cover letter and CV and all that good stuff, I happened to Google search them and see that there was a lawsuit. So that was my first yellow. But that lawsuit had been closed. There wasn't like anything, what can I say? In my research, and I'm not legal, so a lot of it was in legal mumbo jumbo that I'm, that's not my area of expertise. But it did give me a yellow flag, like, hey, this is, be careful. But it looked like it closed clear, like everything was fine and things like that happen. So that was the first caution sign. I would say the second caution sign, but I did overlook it. This is more of a hindsight 2020, was during that 3-month period of actually being hired from doing the free projects. Just so happened to be we were in the middle of a hurricane season, so I didn't care that it was, because I was like in my brain, I was landing like the perfect job for that situation in that moment in time, and spread our science, disseminate it, talk about ABA, and not have it pigeonholed to just autism. Like I was just so gun-ho about all that. So period, like hindsight, that would have been a total red flag. So the immediacy, requesting for, an entire blog or an article or a PowerPoint training, to a mock, like this was all part of my, interview process. Creating a training on social stories and things. Yeah, I look back now and I'm like, oh, red flags, because it was a lot of free work I gave away and not aware of my own value. So yeah, the first yellow flag, like I said, was that I happened to stumble, and then I still submitted my CV. And then I would say actually the first like real red flag that had me concerned was there was an individual who worked there, um, who, and they had mentioned something about that whatever we do or what it's just going to go back. So you don't have to waste your time basically, but they said it in a nice way, you know, kind of covertly. And I look back and I'm like, I really should have left at that point. Another piece was, so this was like 6 months later, I was to work on a training. And within the first 6 months, I did not create that training or even touch it. I was sent into marketing. I was sent into different, was working closely with another BCBA at the time. Um, and they just disappeared. Like they just stopped showing up. And there was a lot of signs from the beginning, but I would say like the real like troublesome was at 6 months. And then probably the next one, real major sign was around 10 working there when I was offered like my third raise. And it didn't make sense. The sales that were coming in to keep this business afloat, right? So even if you were looking at it from an agency perspective, are your billables? So just basic numbers weren't making sense. And it had nothing to do, like I never had access to books or banking information or any of that. If they're selling X amount of dollars and I know I make this amount and there's so and so from this country who gets paid at, you know, $3 an hour or someone $10 an hour. I mean, when the first time around we had people, I think we had people working or contracting from 5 different continents. So like there's a lot of red signs that I just didn't heed the warning because you know, it really came down to I didn't know that side of things.
You tried to warn me in the same way. Because we talked about this. The funny, so you started in the year of, what year was it? Was it before 2020?
Oh yeah.
Because you said 7 years ago.
I want to say.
Yeah,
I think I want to say. I want to say it was about 7. First time I got canned.
Oh yeah, how did you get out the first time? I know. How do you get out? How do you get released?
So I working around 80 hours, and the next day it had an impromptu all hands on deck meeting, and that's literally
that's regular.
And you would
regular,
have to go.
You wake up, and it's 6 in the morning. Mm-hmm.
And I specifically told that person, I'm not going to this meeting. And within 5 minutes, I got a little message saying, you need to be in this meeting, blah, blah, blah. I'm the CEO and da-da-da-da-da. It's like my guilt and just my own, there's some great qualities about myself, but they're also my flaws, like, right, just like anyone else. So as I was debating with myself, I was going to, you know, go back on my word because I was like, I'm not going to this meeting. I just freaking put 80 hours in. I just helped you create the international community. Just like all these, like, just different things going on. And so and all of a sudden I get shot. I'm kicked out of everything. Again, couldn't get to my pay stubs. I couldn't get to just everything. Like it was just kaboom. So that's how I found out I was fired. Mind you, I was a 1099. So
yeah, you can't tell 1099s. You can't require to come to meetings. You can't.
Yeah.
You can kind of do your own thing, as long as yeah.
So
no, you're right.
It was that was the first time, but I learned. You know, I learned. So I would just say each time I go out about my exit, I wasn't so blindsided.
What made you come back the second and third time? Because most of us, the others coming on and others we've worked with, don't come back a second time. You're the only person that's come back or have there been others and I just don't know it?
There, I would say in the clinical space, I can't say for sure, but just in the organization overall, yes, there have been some that have come back. Um, Internally, we would call you guys the OGs. So, hey, OGs, what's going on? When you're ready to come on this side of the fence, OGs, like, still got your back, I promise. When teamwork makes the dream work, it's all real, just not under that individual. Sorry, just had to plug it in, because we still have some people that are working for this, jaded, slighted, and abused. I mean,
Some people like have been there, 10 years. I remember talking to somebody, they'd been there 10 years. They kind of float around in different positions because you can't even keep an organizational chart because it's just
I don't even want to talk about the organizational
I got charged of that, girl. That was my thing. And I was like stuck with it. And then I tried to give it to HR and then I got it back because HR didn't know what to do with it. I'm like, yeah. And then they're like, put them on the website. They're part of the company. I'm like, but they've been here 3 weeks. And then we have 3 weeks later and we got to do new charts. Anyways.
Yeah.
I digress.
Yeah. Sorry. I digress too. You asked a question and I think I totally deflected from it. Do you remember what you had asked? Oh, why I came back. Okay.
Yeah.
Why I came back every single time, like in all reality, I still believe in the power of positive as a human being. I've always been that way. And we never give up hope on our clients, generally speaking. And a human being is a human being. And if they're willing and motivated to be a better person or be more independent or whatever the case may be, I just have an affinity for people like that. And I fell for the gift of gab. Now, each time I went back, I went back smarter, right? So
yeah, by the time you came and saw me, you're like trying to give me heads up. And I'm like, okay, I'm taking in the information. I believe you. I just don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. So like to be preemptive, and anyone who decides to work like CYA, like straight up, I would ask for, prepayment up front. Like we're not going to play that game. I believe in the mission of the organization, but I do not believe in the person that actually owns it.
Because with a mission of transforming lives, which side note, that phrase didn't exist until like a couple months ago when we were all there.
Yeah, no, it was there. So
it was. Everything goes around. And that was the one thing you kept telling me, because you're like, oh, it's gonna come back, and I'm like, okay, where's the pattern? Because behavior analytics.
What did you guys call me, the oracle? And I was like, I'm a sayer. I'm not an oracle. I'm not godlike. Nah, but it's amazing.
Yeah, because
the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, right? So I had been through the.
You're describing 7 years ago. For some reason, I kept thinking you started in 2020. But
no, if you started that was the first time I got canned. Was right when the pandemic lockdown was. I was like, oh, this is great.
Double whammy.
Like, yes. But in reality, I'm happy, right? Like for the experience, for the knowledge, for the learning. Even though I couldn't produce the change I was going in for, the type of self-growth I've been able to have. Working with such a master, like, I mean, that's really what it is, like master manipulation. The consumers I work with, in practice and under supervision and everything like that, man, they really have a hard time over my eyes now, but I would have never been able to experience that because, you would expect that from someone who's receiving behavioral services. You wouldn't expect that from a CEO of an organization, someone who touts, ethics over profits when it's over ethics for this person.
Yeah. So in talking about toxicity, the only word I can think of working there is just literal chaos. And you literally feel like it's being dumped on you all day, every day. Like it start, because I'm Mountain Standard Time and the CEO is in Pacific Standard. So it'd be like
Allegedly.
5 o'clock there.
Allegedly in Pacific.
Nobody's ever, how many people have met nobody's been to that person's place or office.
Like their home office.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't seem odd though, right? Like if you're a business owner, you really don't want people coming to your home.
Or even like in their area. Like if they're in the area, I don't even know if they met in person. Like
so I met this person. Yeah, I've met this person in real life, in Florida, and that person has participated in several or like ABAI, BALC, like this person list. And yeah, so people have met this person, as a human being, like a real person outside of the screen that I'm aware of. I can't say never because I don't know, but I'm not aware of anyone. Like you said, her vicinity, his vicinity, whatever. Yeah.
I have to interrupt really quick.
Yeah.
So I have a question from Casanova Klutz. So
Awesome name.
You guys ready for that?
Yes.
Okay. So were most employees picked from Indeed or other recruitment sites, or were they reached out to specifically?
So first off, let me ask this to this person. Are you still working with this company? Because if you are, then you would know that Indeed is only one aspect that they go poaching. Entire profile that Hannah and I and another individual have figured out, because they actually target specific people that will fit the profile to work underneath this individual sector. So this individual may offer CE, continuing education, or this company, continuing education, for behavior analysts, possibly speech therapist, possibly psychologist. They possibly are ABA agencies. And no, it's not all that way. Some of it is through social media. It's very targeted. I would say it's very similar to some of my individuals. The way that they people is very similar to some of the clients I work with who have sexual offender backgrounds. It's got almost like a stalky type of behavior kind of feel, like in all reality. So Indeed is just one aspect, but generally it's going to be more on a personal level through social media, your LinkedIn, your Facebook. And she usually identifies someone in different roles. So like generally in the clinical side of things, probably identified who she wants 3 to 6 months before she even engages with them to be hired.
It can take a process. You meet, and we talked about it being LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And as far as like different departments, the clinical department is more of creating content.
Right.
So your BCBAs, your healthcare type of area, those are LinkedIn. And you're right. Because even with me, I reached out to her, no response. Months later, I reached out, but it took about 3 meetings before I came on.
And look at your
other
previous
people. Mm-hmm.
Like just looking at LinkedIn, and we can talk more about Indeed in a minute. That's just a different animal, wrapped up, but it's the same process, right? Same behavioral patterns. So even if you look back, I wasn't obviously poached through LinkedIn because this was like way exists, but it wasn't to like the level it is now. But if you look at you responding, oh great, my light just went out. Sorry, people. Gotta love.
We're having fun with technology tonight. We're like for an hour, we're trying to set it up, and we're like, well, we're still going. We're here.
Yeah. So, like Hannah, look back at your original even reached out, typing wise, texting, like the smiley face or the thumbs up, or what post did he responded with a simple, emoji, right? She was already she he it was already funneling us just based on, did we like that post? Did we give this person the attention that they so desire? And
It was
most
following
of,
a post.
and I
It's with the
let me
post.
guess. Let me guess. Let me just let me guess. Was it in regards to guess. Was it in regards to the field is so jacked up and there's all these ABA agencies that are privately owned and they're destroying the field?
It had to do with that plus the RBT research.
And RBT,
Which was that actually finished? Or was it just talked about? Because all the projects, almost none of them are ever finished. Almost.
yeah. Well,
yeah. Or they're refurbished, or they're
regurgitated. Yeah.
Same stuff.
Yeah.
Over and
Same
over.
stuff.
Repeat.
I think, what do you call it? Wash, rinse, repeat or something?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So to the question about Indeed is more so for fishing for behavior analysts or BTs for the recruiting department. So they have the clinical side that does like CE content, creating, I'm going to use this word very lightly because I actually do write curricula, and what this suggested as curriculum is not it, but I'm just going to lightly use that word since I'm going to start finding out what we're talking about. You'll know what I'm saying. So like these curricula or curriculums were, they'll, create stories, just all kinds of different things. Clinically sound, right? It may have been written by a clinician, doesn't mean, right? And I say that because it becomes very space and not, there's just a lot of things that doesn't make sense. So with the Indeed, it was specifically behavior analysts or behavior technicians or to recruit them for a client that they owe, whatever their agreement is to supply to this thing called the RBT pipeline. But once in a while, and the Indeed thing was fairly more newer, like maybe in the last couple of years versus when I first worked there, that wasn't something that we were actively using in Indeed, or they were using, because that wasn't my, so with that, they're just trying to funnel in people. It's just a nice way of them selling human beings to agencies and to not be the ones that are the problem, right? They're the ones actually sound clinicians. Most of them were looking for sound clinicians or people that want to become a behavior tech or things like that. And but the Indeed thing was just to get a pool of bunch of people to basically sell them off to these agencies. And it was like a pill mill. They use it mill to supply them. And then if it so happened to be that someone during their research and Indeed happened to be like a Hannah or myself or some other clinicians that they're here, what we're talking about. So I'm not going to say their name. If they had like a unique, I don't know, maybe or maybe a technology background, or maybe they were dual credentialed. And as long as they fit the profile, it would take those people from Indeed, instead of funneling them to the clients, to these ABA agencies, that person would actually reel them in and have them start working the next day or, the next over the weekend or whatever the case may be. But that didn't just go for clinicians too. So they would funnel from Indeed also other recruiters. And generally the recruiters, when they had the recruitment part, from what I observed, this really wasn't my area, they would do maybe 3 Americans and the rest, it was all outsourced to the international community, which is not a problem, right? Like, go for it. Is when you are paying in minimum wage. That is the problem.
So then while you were there, what are some of the situations that would back up and you say, yes, this is toxicity, or this is unethical, or this is just outright wrong? What are some of the projects or things like that would give some examples? Where do you start, right?
Yeah, like toxicity is not even like, to me, like, it's not, that's only one piece of it, right?
Yeah, agreed.
That's only
Like,
one piece. It was extremely abusive. So I'm gonna go with some like basic things that we would teach our families not to do with their kiddos, right? So one of them is, let's say you're in a group setting and maybe you did something wrong, right? Or maybe you didn't, because more times than not, you didn't do anything wrong. Is that you didn't know it was an expectation, because that was changing literally every 10 to 15 minutes, and it didn't matter. But frequently you would be, if it was perceived by the owner, the CEO, right? If that person perceived that you were a threat, or if they perceived that you were getting more attention than them, or if it was that they would have to express to somebody that they were a failure in some type of space. And I'm not saying they're a failure, right? I'm just saying like those kind of like perceptions. Then they would deflect that onto their employees or contractors and berate them and abuse them, yell at them. In front of everyone. One of the times that I can remember that really, really, are we allowed to curse on here?
That, I think that's a Kevin question.
Kevin, are we allowed to curse? I should have asked this before.
You give me a thumbs up, or you go ahead.
Repeat the question.
Cuss.
This is Hannah's show. If you want to cuss.
Hannah, it's up
You
to
know
you.
what? Behaviorally, there's research that backs up that it allows an outlet. So go for it.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of research that says the most intelligent have like the F word is like right up there, and the
What?
4-letter words.
That means I'm not that intelligent.
Because you gotta add the
It's gotta be
Hannah,
worth
we
it.
can practice. I say you say work out, I tell you, that's always the answer. Well, okay. The reason I asked is because, like, just thinking about it gets me very, very frustrated. So I remember there was one time, and this is specifically to me, right? So it was one thing to have, well, there's two things, but let me start with myself first. I remember there was a time where we were talking with another organization, and this CEO literally just told them how much of a fucking bitch and how shitty my work output was. The ability for me to not respond in that moment, because the only thing I had for that person was nothing different than in physical aggression. Like, thank goodness, like, there was a because of the just blatant disrespect. And that, like, you never tell on someone and their back, right? The coercive behaviors that this person, it's not that they weren't aware, right? It's not like they didn't have, were ignorant or dumb. This person, by any means, right? Like, intelligent. Like, if there's anything I can say about this person, intelligence is definitely this person. But to berate and abuse people like that, now that was awkward as heck. But then to also be in a group meeting and then them berating and abusing a colleague in front of you, that's probably even harder to swallow. And I know, Hannah, you and I have been in there together.
Yeah, I had to shut down meetings. Like soon after I started, there was an all leadership meeting, and I was like, wow. The It wasn't like the words that were said were like, oh my word, you just said the most terrible thing. It was the negative. It was like
Yeah.
complaining that you don't have this work done. Well, there's no timelines. They change all the time. And then when you have proof, it's argued. The one phrase I got all the time was, Hannah, you're wrong. And then they would continue into what they were saying all the time. But in the groups, I remember thinking, oh, that was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And then there was another meeting later, and we had a new VP of HR and recruiting. She was texting me, Hannah, she can't do this. And she was going on and on and on about all that. The CEO was going on, and you could see people's faces. Just, it was horrible. And it's like, I've never been to war, but this is what I imagine. You're standing there and you have these invisible bullets just literally coming at you. And I remember I had to interrupt the meeting, and I was like studying tactical breathing, everything. I'm like, how do you like keep your marbles and not like lose it? Because in a leadership, you're supposed to take care of your people. And so I became the punching bag. But I remember that meeting, the HR person is like, she shouldn't be able to do this. What can you do? Can shut it down. So I'm talking to the other COO because I'm like, I got to shut this down again. Who's going to shut down? You or me is going to take this on. And so we shut it down, and then we pulled her aside. The other COO and I both met with her, and then just to give everyone space, because it's not productive just to tell everyone what they're doing wrong all day, every day. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Like,
And
how
if you
can you get
notice,
any work done?
you don't. And if you look back, right, like hindsight's always beautiful, right? It's always beautiful. Because there's like extra learning that takes place. So when you think about the time, you know, this person was berating you or someone else or just being abused, like we're talking about verbal abuse, right?
It's
And emotional
verbal.
abuse. We're
It's
not talking
all
about
verbal.
physical. It was a virtual environment, right? So
Mhm.
that part of, you know, but it was whatever this person was a direct reflection of themselves for not engaging in X, Y. I know when you came on board, came on around the same time, and I remember one of the first conversations. Um, I won't say the first conversation we had because I know I was like negative Nelly when we first met.
We had a learning curve when we met, because I remember calling you once. I was like, what's going on? Like, I don't know.
You weren't ready.
After that,
You were not ready that first call. You
I'm
were not
like,
ready for the baggage I was going to hand you.
I'm like, I know it's bad, but that hope that you're talking about, that
Yeah.
hope in another human, I'm like, maybe I'm here as one opportunity for this leader who has the potential. Like, if the ship got in order, that's why I think we all stayed. If we saw the potential of what that company could do, and the vision and the passion. And I guess in my head, I didn't realize how many chances she'd had before to turn the ship around. And so I was waiting. I was waiting because none of it was so obvious. It was like just under the line to get away with it, and people were letting it happen. But I was trying to figure out, well, how do you handle this?
Yeah.
And is it possible to turn it around?
Yeah. And I remember we had a conversation. You were like, oh, it's possible. I said, it's always possible. Right. And I also think I mentioned something about like, this third time was someone else who came back. Hey, this time it's actually different, and different was the honeymoon period that you and right. So I mean, we even got down to the science where exactly, and she was going, it was going to hire, fire, and like, things and mask it under the lovely diagnosis of bipolar, which is not true. People who suffer from bipolar, I'm not someone who can diagnose, but in my experience with people with bipolar, and I'm not saying this person doesn't have it, but to exclusively say it was due to bipolar, to be so cyclical, to be literally every 3 months. How many days did you say you were working there? 100 and what?
129.
129, 9 days over 3 months, right?
I think it was supposed to be exactly 3, because before I left, the VP of HR was like, "Oh, I was surprised. I didn't expect for you to still be here."
Yeah.
But I was given an extra project to extend my stay. An impossible project, which, by the way, we executed. Thank you. I was like, if I do nothing else, I did the internal ethics. I was like, I wanted to give people a voice.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, you give me something that's supposed to be impossible, I want to make it possible, to prove to myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we were talking about the cycles, because even there were weekly cycles. So Monday, your phone will explode. Like I had a point where I could not look at my phone in the morning until like I was ready. I was out of my room. I was going, because it was too much. It was like I was doing 60 hours, not even 80 like you were. Yeah. And then
it feels like 1,000 hours there. It's like you don't sleep. I mean, do you still get I don't mean to cut you off. I just have a question for you, because we're talking about like toxicity, and like that kind of environment. And this is just like, barely touching the surface of everything. But like I still have a automatic, like almost like a PTSD response to chimes. And the thing that sinks is as right of services. Oftentimes we, use the Microsoft Teams or the Google kind of platform. And I am working with myself to basically undo some classical conditioning that has happened due to fear response and eliciting from all those Monday, I don't know if you're experiencing the same thing, but I'm thinking, you would think after going for 3 rounds, that would have been like you were immune to it. And it's amazing to me how much my body still remembers that. I still get that response, and yeah, like it, and yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
For lack of better words.
I couldn't go in my office for days, weeks. I couldn't go in it. I now have to, my laptop kind of busted, so I have to use a desktop, and it's only in my office. I couldn't go in there. I couldn't go in there. I actually had to leave all social media, all like go in a hole in a sense. Me, my kids. It's like getting some sort of invisible bullets sent at you 24/7, and you never get a break. And yeah, I haven't been a lot in teams, but now I'm like, I know. Yeah, I think I would start panicking. I had to like disassociate. But I was there feeling like I needed to protect people. And I'll have to say,
Hannah, like when we were working together, and I was actually directly working underneath Hannah and someone else this last time that there. So we worked in the beginning, like the first month, we didn't really kind of like siloed to myself, but the few times that Hannah and I first, she was like, I need to protect everyone. And I had asked Hannah one thing. I said, keep this person away from me so I can finish why I came back on board. And for whatever reason, you made it happen. Like you protected me, And like I'm always going to say,
a book. She's writing a book. Leave her alone.
She's like, I don't know why she's writing a book, but she needs to write this book.
In my gut, you're supposed to do it. I was like, this is what she came for. This is all we're doing. I'm like,
2.5 months
many
later,
hours.
the book was so important.
Beautiful book. Now you've written a book. But we needed that. That actually, so there were there were no departments when I got there.
Right? Like, so let me say
Hold
that.
on. We kind of had them for like a day and then they disappeared.
I,
and then they come
well,
back.
okay, but a true department, you know, stays. It stays, right? Like you don't switch people in and out. Like it's okay if you're a startup and you wear like 4 different hats, but you usually have like one area that you like focus on. In this organization, that doesn't happen. Everyone is set up to fail. Like that's true cultural, you know, toxicity. Sorry, that word just gets me. Stutter on it. I'm sorry, people. I'm like, oh.
Do we need another word? I was having to Google and make sure it was a word. I was like, I know it's toxic, but is toxic a word? If not, we're gonna make it happen.
Facts. But you know, and the thing is, even though this was virtual, you know, and it's an extreme case, right? Like I'm not gonna sugarcoat and say like, oh, all these signs you're gonna see, you know, at the next agency. But when there is even small signs of it, like looking back, you know, again, hindsight 2020 is always amazing, but looking back, maybe if I left earlier, right? Like maybe I didn't put in almost 3 years the first round and continually try to change it. Maybe you and I would have never, maybe the company would have went down, because I know the team that I had in that organization, and we were talking about departments, we had, you know, set departments, but everyone wore multiple hats.
Correct. Because they kept getting random tasks from the CEO. I'm like, why are you doing that? You're in recruiting. Why are you doing an admin or a sales or something? Like they were sent, no matter how many levels in the leadership, the CEO always want to go all the way down. Like I had a meeting once. I'd have a meeting and I walk away. My list is this long, and that's like online, okay, like in Monday.com. And I walk away and I'm like, hey, we got to do these things. Within a couple days, I found out that she then met with somebody in tech at like 3 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then he had a massive list and he's trying to execute and he can't because he's not in the position to do it. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, dude, like whatever you need to do, you need to come to me. And I'm like, hold up. And I would stop projects to get the right people to do them. So yeah, there was an email sent after I left to a client saying that I bottleneck stuff. I'm like, yes. Hold on, make it legal and ethical.
When you say client, right? Are you meaning like we're working with the client, or are you talking about like an ABA agent?
That.
An ABA agency.
The clients I experienced were those, except for the RBT program. I did stop that one because you and I met. This was before I left. Okay.
This is when we were still first.
I know.
We were still a little fresh. You were probably like, this lady right here, I don't know what to do with her.
No, the RBT, we kept putting this, whatever we needed to do, we needed to book it, right? Like as far as schedule it, and it kept getting pushed aside. And I was like, what is this dang RBT program?
The university thing, right? The fake university.
That was another thing. No, this is towards the end. We were talking about how this company offers giving you a competency to become an RBT.
Okay.
Well, if you're a BCBA, you give a competency, you're tied to that person, your number, your credentials.
Oh, right. And that was the day was like the day you got canned, I think.
It was soon after I got canned. The way I went out with a bang, girl.
I know you did.
I'm not gonna.
It was beautiful to see. It was beautiful.
Oh, it was lovely. But we were talking about the program, and all of a sudden I realized, sure, it's a nice idea. All of these are nice ideas. But if you get down to it, somebody else's, their hind end is on the line. And I was like, I'm not tying my name to strangers with RBTs with this program. I don't know who they are from Adam. And then I wasn't going to ask anybody else. So I specifically took note that we'll put it on hold because I couldn't message her all the time. There's too many things I need to ask her. I tried to make a list of questions. I'm like, fine, I'm just going to document it somewhere, and then it'll come up and I'll tell her once we have the time. Because we'd set meetings, and she just not show up for meetings. So it was great.
Yeah, just
So
like
put
she
it
wouldn't
there.
like for all of a sudden this person migraine on payday and no one would get
Exactly.
paid.
Yep, on payday. And then people be asking me and the other CEO, when are we going to be paid? And we're like, she's supposed to run it. We never got access. Even in the COO position, we never got access to even what the finances look like. I remember saying, hey, how can we help you do the budget? How can we help so we don't keep running into no pay? And even when I was there, if you're in leadership, you're told you're in leadership and your money goes to other people. You're specifically told that. You're the last person paid.
Mhm.
But I remember she said, oh, it's there. Go find it. We had to literally get other employees to pull from other pieces, and we still not got the whole picture of what was going on with the money. So it never added up. Ever.
Yeah, even like when
Ever.
there, like it just didn't
Even
make
clients.
sense.
The clients, the ABA agency she worked with, I remember there was a meeting that the CEO didn't show up, which I wasn't expecting to run the meeting. And of course, I never knew what was happening in the meetings. I just show up and I'm like, I don't know what's happening because nobody informed me. I'm like, hi.
There you
Well,
become
this
like the
person-
ultimate BSer. Like it's a skill
Yeah.
set that you thought you might
Yeah.
have, but in that environment, like holy crap. Like
Oh, you walk in it, you're pulled. You're pulled into meetings. I'm like, I don't know what
Yeah.
I'm being pulled into. But yeah, even if you
and
say
somehow
no, she's
you
gonna
have
say
to
come.
be able.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about
But
the
yeah, I walked
ability.
into this meeting in the morning, and at that time we had housed clinical
Mhm.
inside of operations, and I was
Oh,
spending
yeah.
most of my time in recruiting, which was hell. Oh, it was horrible. I'm not a recruiter. I am not a headhunter. I'm sorry. And I don't know the systems, but I know how to take pieces and put it together and problem solve. But I
You also
showed
know how
up.
to create systems out of nothing.
Yep. From like, oh, here we go. But I showed
Good old
up.
OBM, right?
I didn't even get to the original reason I was hired. Never even did it. Because
Go
the
ahead, tell us
operations.
why were you originally hired? Like let's backtrack.
I
Because
had
you're
a
sitting here
plan.
talking about like recruiting, clinical operations, freaking sales, going after clients, and basically begging because you're not going to get paid and your colleagues aren't going to get paid because for what
That's what we
BS.
were
Like
told. If you want to be paid, you go get the money from the ABA agency.
Yeah.
But oh, to finish that story about the ABA agency, I showed up and they were pissed. Later on, I found out they were being charged more than what they should have been. So they were trying to tighten up their books, but the CEO wasn't there for that call.
So you're right under the bus.
I didn't know it until later on.
Toxicity.
Excuse me.
Yeah. So why were you like? How did you get?
So
I know we were talking a lot about me, but shoot, like I would love to hear like how you got sucker ducked into this place.
I found out about the agency because back in 2019, I needed CEUs because I was contracting. I had to get my stuff. I went through the ACE providers and the board website and just skipped through the alphabet and just picked one. It literally was that one. I liked the CEOs. I was like, oh, they're thinking outside the box. This is fantastic. So I followed them on LinkedIn.
Ironically,
and then after those few times, I know.
I helped create a lot of those CE events in 2019.
Oh, really? Oh, that's funny. Did you do the?
Yeah. Which one did you do? OBM series?
I did the kindness one.
I
did there's cool research in birthing. There's an app they made. I did that one. I was like, that's just cool. Like, use science to help people's life. Connect science to everyday life. So I had an agency who had pitched me to be an author of a curriculum for basically bringing human focus into behavior analysis. What are the 10 core pillars of good treatment?
Mm-hmm.
They pitched a great idea, but I didn't think it just in my gut it wasn't it. And when I was talking to her, because I'd reached out because I wanted like business, I'm like, oh, she knows business, and she's the only person, I don't know how else to say this. I'm an ideas person. She's the only person whose ideas were bigger than mine that I had met at the time. And I'm like, I need this. I need to think bigger. So that's why I was reaching out.
1 hour.
Oh, we have a question?
1 hour.
1 hour? Oh,
It's already been an hour? Holy crap.
Oh.
Thanks.
I mean, we can do this again.
Let me know.
Well, we had only claimed 60 minutes. Okay. I originally came on board to create content to help educate clinicians on what clinically sound, what are the pillars to make it, I guess, clinically sound. And she liked the idea so much. I was supposed to get her more details. But then she called me. I remember it was 6 p.m. And I happened to be in my kitchen. I think it was August, right before I moved. Because I didn't know how I was going to like move and do everything. And she's like, I don't usually do this. But I think we're supposed to work together.
We laugh now because now we know that is exactly what she does.
Oh, it's, I don't know. How are you supposed to take that?
Yeah.
And everything lined up, and there wasn't anything lined that I could find that was like negative. And this person's name goes with ethics. Like, we have top names in the field doing CUs with this person. And this person continues to do business with her. I don't know if they don't know or if they just close their eyes. But I came on, and within 2 weeks, I was like, I can't make you any clinical content. It's a mess. I was like, I could fix this. I didn't know what's going on. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, okay, let's fix it. And then change did start happening for a short time. Always short.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's how I got sucked in.
Yeah.
So
I think it goes right back to like how we mentioned before. It's like the ability to believe that there's great potential and hope and mission, like I think even people who might be there now, or like the most recent clinicians that have joined, if they ever do see this, like whatever you're about to experience, like know this, you're not the first one and you're not going to be the last.
Yep.
Like there is years of this historical pattern of behavior across multiple facets, across multiple departments, across multiple fields. I mean, we can go back, at least we can find documentation at least 20 years back of the same type of behaviors.
Yeah. Legal lawsuit and back
Yeah.
20 years of the same habit over
Right.
and over. And as behavioralists and in the behavior field, why do people keep doing the same thing over and over? They get something out of it they wanted and enjoyed. That's the core. That's what reinforcement is.
Yep. Anything,
So.
and this individual, it would be safe, I would say, that when you're looking just like, right, it is reinforcement, but it's both positive and negative, and I think the other piece that we don't talk a lot about in our space is not just like the functional relationship, but the ability to not be held accountable, right? They're always scapegoating. They're getting out of it.
This person doesn't think there's like the rules apply.
And fortunate to this person so far, the rules haven't applied. They haven't,
No.
and I'm not saying that everyone deserves to have punishment, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
To be able to not even come in contact with different types of consequences other than reinforcement is not natural.
Correct.
And how do we change it, Hannah? Like, stop, going back to your question, because I thought change could happen. I believed in it. I went up different, antecedent manipulations or techniques or whatever you want to call them, like you mentioned, to me over and over, in working with this individual, including putting more safety, so that like knowing that, the second time I went in, I didn't go in blinded thinking like, oh, I can work with this person and it's going to be amicable when they let me go, right? Like I knew it was going to be shut me
Yep.
out and that's it. And I'm surprised you're fired.
Yep.
And then some talking, you know, about like how crappy I did work and things like that. You know, or I know after your colleague, the other COO, when you guys were left, this person about y'all, you know, and it wasn't true. It's the lack of accountability. They're going to continue doing because they're reinforced. And yeah, how are we going to help? How can we take this? Like, you know, your whole reason for this is like, how can we take these experiences and share it with other people? Like, we're talking about like a severe case again, you know, but the toxic culture, you know, does apply in the clinic-based settings. I mean, it's in all of our ethics codes, so not just in the behavior analyst ethics code or the RBTs. I mean, you look at all the disciplines, even the discipline of business. For someone who has an MBA, there's an ethics code.
I think a lot of people who leave toxic work environments just want to leave it and move on. And I think it takes a lot to be willing to share it. Like I wouldn't be able to do it with the others without the rest of you guys. But I think creating the awareness first, giving each other the support that it was wrong and it continues to be wrong. But you got to start with awareness first.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been talking a lot about it. Take care of ourselves first.
Yeah, put our oxygen mask on first.
Yep.
Yeah.
Take care of ourselves first. And that's what we did. So it's been a little bit. It's taken a little while. I was like, well, we'll just use the show to start it. And then give people a space so they have a voice, because there's nothing worse. Like I still remember her saying, like I'd say one sentence and she'd yell and raise her voice and be like, "You're wrong." No one should have to feel that. We don't want anyone else to feel that. So we take care of ourselves first. Give each other the support on if you want a voice or whatever support, because there's community. Because we talked about potentially being up to 40 people and who have been harmed, if probably more.
Definitely more. Statutes of limitations are a pain in the butt.
Yeah. And if it's a 90% turnover every year, at least 20 people are getting burned plus every year. Plus.
And you're just talking about like the people that are employed or contracted with them. Like, I know,
Yeah.
like when you think about like really the impact, an organization that has continually and progressively gotten worse, right? Like I'll just go. Time I was there, we made more in sales, like more money than when you and I were there together, right? Like what the heck? I know we gotta go. So I forget what I was gonna say. Sorry.
But you're right. You guys did.
Yeah, I know. The data doesn't lie. You're cherry picking. But I hope we to have these conversations and educate and support other people. And I hope more and more people from this organization or who have worked there, you know, they come and talk with us, right? Like, as many people as I have with in that organization, and those that experience some of the things that you and I have, there usually is this, when you get fired or you leave, it's like this sense of like, right?
Yep. You feel free.
Right. And then the next day or two, it's like this place of like, I don't know how this person does it. It's almost like this organization defines you as your self-worth, point where like that shatters. And what I like to do is help other people who might be in that situation, because I think, like you brought up, like we all came together and we all had our good days and bad days, to work through that, right? And it truly is like a PTSD response. I mean, it really, really
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
and then how many people she actually affects, right? It's not just the employees, it's the families,
Yep.
it's the clients. I mean, Hannah, did you come out of the
Yep.
field just to work with this person? Like, did you stop seeing so many
I stopped the vision I was going to do because I thought we
Gotcha.
could do it together. I put on
Yeah.
pause. And then when I was suddenly let go, I was like, well, I can go back into the field and do what I was doing for 5 years before, or jump out of an airplane, in a sense, and just go for it. And that's why I was like, well, I want to give people a voice. After what happened, give people a safe space, no matter where in the field of applied behavior analysis, because it's not going down a good path. And if we have companies like this who become the name in essence of ethics, our field's only going to get worse.
And not only that, like, not do they self-promote that they are ethical promotion. No one in our field was like, that is a right? They themselves said, hey, I am.
Yes.
And
yes.
then, sucker ducks like us were like, we will be that too. We agree with you. This is the way it should be. Only knowing that she's literally, it is literally regurgitating what we want to hear. Like, that's all it is. It's a
the
lip
same
service.
saying for
Yeah.
like 10 to 20 years. So hopefully
And
we can bring awareness.
Different channels. It's not just the behavioral health field, right? Like,
correct. It's attaching to speech and it's attaching to other ones.
Recruiting is one more. A salon.
We're gonna have to do a whole nother episode, you and me. Before my producer shuts out everything out on me.
Thanks, Kevin.
No, it's all good. I know it's late for you too. But thank you so much for Krystal, because I know you have such a great perspective and you know things and you see things in different ways, that I wanted other people to be able to hear your perspective and your story so that they don't have to experience that same stuff and come back smarter in life, and learn to protect themselves, which is like, it's good learning curve, but we don't want more people to have to go through that.
We don't have to go through pain to learn, right?
Correct.
That's
Correct.
what it comes down to. And thank you for just doing this and just even asking me. It's an honor. And I hope whoever is in that organization, if you are thinking about leaving, and you're not a bot, that's the other thing, Hannah,
I know, I remember that.
Fake human beings. It's not even I'm speculating here, but the behavior doesn't add up, right? I hope that if you are there and you know what organization we're talking about, that you get out safely. And if you need a support network, you're not crazy, you're not alone. The emotions you're about to experience when you leave this place is going to be hell on earth. But there is a brighter side, and you can get good relationships out of this. So, yeah, sorry, it just gets me.
I don't flip all of it into good. You can always flip something into good and take it as a life, because life throws mud, and this was a learning curve, and for some reason we had to learn it and come together and learn and grow. And in the coming weeks, we have the stories of other people that worked there, and we'll take that spin. So we will do that and get those perspectives. And I'm not going to say names, because you know how sometimes in the universe you're like, you have something lined up and then it doesn't happen. But you'll have to come back and talk again, Krystal, and then we'll go from there.
I had fun, yeah. Hey, real quick, Hannah, I heard that there's some moles over there, so maybe they'll reach out to us. I don't know
if I get messages. I'll wake up in LinkedIn. I'll have 5 new contacts. I'm like, oh, you're all from that company. Okay. But for those that want to watch the next time for more tea, but to protect yourself as well, it's going to be Thursday next week, and we always have a new guest, or we have people come back with lots of ideas. And you can go to sparrowshow.com. You can go to my socials, hspero.show. And I usually post about all the shows because there's 2 other shows too. You can check those out for different people. But thank you so much, Krystal and Kevin,
Thank you.
for
Thank you,
sticking
Hannah.
in for longer.
I know.
I get paid extra for this, right?
What'd you say?
Nice touch. Nice